Next up, we got Kain, the founder of Synthetics. Let's give him a round of applause.
Hey, everyone. I'm usually up here on a panel answering softball questions and not giving talks. So we'll see how we go. And usually I've got Stanny with me to kind of carry things, but unfortunately he wasn't here. So I'm going to talk about innovation in DeFi and NFTs and the kind of intersection of those two. I think one of the things that's obviously pretty present on people's minds is the overall market cycle that we're in. It's pretty obvious that we're kind of headed towards maybe a bit of a crypto winter or a bear market. There's probably a lot of people that are going to have various opinions about what a bear market looks like, what we do. It's time to build, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that bear markets are, I think, an opportunity for things to slow down, right? And so, you've got this situation where in a bull market, you basically are optimizing for the dumbest things to be done as quickly as possible. And then in a bear market, it kind of flips around, and people are like, okay, a whole bunch of stuff just happened over the last, whatever. In the case of the last market cycle, probably 18 months to 2 years. And it's almost impossible for anyone to have actually kept up with what was happening, right? And now what we're seeing is people kind of looking around and saying, okay, there was this thing that happened, there were these things. What if I was to kind of combine those things together, and we can start to kind of make some novel things rather than just kind of copy pasta. And so I think the opportunity right now, if first of all, you're still here. Right, so either you bought your flights and hotel rooms too early, and it's a sunk cost, and you're just hoping to try and recoup something, or you're in a situation where you are genuinely here because you think that this is going to be technology that changes the world. Now, I don't know if any of you are history buffs, but a couple of weeks ago there was this really cool meme called the super cycle. And the super cycle was basically this idea that we were never going to have another bear market. It was just going to be up only from here on out. We were all going to make it, et cetera. And I think the reason why that meme and that narrative was so powerful is because we are sitting here wanting to kind of believe that we've got everything right. And the reality is that there were a lot of things that we didn't get right in the last cycle. So one of the things that I think that we need to do in this process is kind of like look at historically how things evolved previously. And so
And we don't have the
skip ahead to
panel is a big one.
So yeah, let's look at the last cycle for a second, right? So we had ICOs. So during 2016, 2017, Ethereum existed, it was a network, but it didn't really do much, right? It was only kind of good for raising capital. That was basically it. There weren't too many smart contracts that were running. And then we went into a bear market at like the end of, probably like mostly through 2018. I think by the middle of 2018, we were like, okay, this is now a bear market. It was pretty obvious. Like July 2018 for me was the moment where I was like, all right, like, fun times are over. We're gonna have to, work out what's next. But right about that time, as we're going into the bear market, a whole bunch of smart contract suites launched. So, Maker launched. We launched the Haven stablecoin. There were a bunch of other stablecoins that launched. We had lending protocols that were launching. So we started to actually see the kind of fruits of this crazy ICO mania get delivered. And then we had this, kind of 12-month build-up period where it was slowly kind of building up, and we were getting a bit of traction. Things were starting to work, and then we had DeFi summer. But when you actually look back at that period, all through kind of 2019, even though it was technically a bear market, a lot of the OG DeFi projects were doing quite well, right? And so we were in this kind of situation. I think this is where this supercycle concept came from, where it seemed like we'd kind of decoupled from just having an overall crypto market trend, right? We had in 2021 NFTs kind of going crazy while DeFi was going down, right? And so it was this sense that like, okay, we're up only here and this is all working. But I think if you look back at ICOs and the innovation that ICOs kind of, I guess, worked on was like, how quickly can you raise money? How simple can you make a smart contract to get as much ETH or whatever in? And then when we look at the NFT kind of bull market, it was basically just PFP sets. Like the vast majority of things were like, how quickly, how many PFPs are there? Is it 10,000? Is it 8,888? Pudgy penguins, shout out to the pudgy penguins out there. That was the innovation. Like the level of innovation was literally how many of the thing are you going to do? What's the price that you're going to sell them? Most of the financialization was how do we do auctions? How do we sell them off, et cetera, which is very similar to the ICOs, right? We had Dutch auctions, reverse Dutch auctions. We had all kinds of crazy things that we were trying to build to see how we could basically raise money. And so I think when we got to this point with NFTs where it was just a proliferation of just PFP set, PFP set, PFP set, that was kind of the point where we needed to sort of stop and say, okay, this is not going to work. We're not actually going to get any traction if this is all that we're doing, right? And so then when you look today and you go, okay, what are the things that we can do with NFTs and what are some of the lessons that we've learned as we kind of stop and slow down, we're starting to see some kind of interesting innovations pop up. So one of the things that, I don't know if you, do you guys follow Matt Levine from Bloomberg? He writes a daily newsletter called Money Stuff. He writes a lot about crypto and most of it is, I guess not super positive because I think the view is that a lot of the stuff that's happening is not very sustainable. But he wrote recently about a project called Pinktarda, and I think one of the cool things about this is it's basically NFTs for hotel rooms. So, and I have no financial affiliation, I don't know anything about them, but it's an interesting concept. So basically what you have is this situation where you've got a physical space for a certain amount of time, right? So a night in a single hotel room, and you tokenize it as an NFT, and then you allow for a hotel to basically have certainty of income because they can pre-sell all of these things, and then there's a secondary marketplace. And so this secondary marketplace for hotel rooms allows anyone, on the night before or whatever, to buy this NFT. All you have to do is turn up with the NFT, and you have the hotel room, right? And so things like that, where it's not necessarily a financial product, but it's finding a way to actually leverage the fact that this non-fungible token is kind of intersecting with some non-fungible thing in the real world, right? And connecting those two things. Profile pictures are obviously cool, but as we kind of go through the process of kind of weeding out some of the craziness of the last year, we really need to work out what are the new primitives? What are some of these new things that we can combine together? And I think when you look at DeFi and you look at why DeFi Summer happened, basically it was the composability, right? So you had all these DeFi projects. You had ETHLend, which became Aave. You had Compound. You had Uniswap, and they were all kind of independent and siloed. And then people started to realize that you could actually combine them together, and you could start to build some really interesting things. And the best part about that is that it didn't require permission. So you didn't have to go and ask Stanny if you could, connect to Aave or, talk to Robert or, integrate synthetics. There's no one that you needed to talk to. You could just turn up. And so, we saw a whole bunch of innovation around that. And I think that in the next kind of 6 to 12 months, as we go through this process, we're going to see a lot of people who are going to look around and say, okay, I've got, some financialized product, some DeFi thing, and I can see the mechanism that DeFi has built, right? I can see that we built this interesting novel mechanism in DeFi, but there is some non-fungible aspect that we could potentially combine with it. And so people are already starting to do this. So one of the ecosystem projects that I support is Pegasus. And so when they did their capital raise, they created an NFT, which is like a kind of community representation as well as like a capital formation device, right? But not a simple profile picture kind of set. It was basically a way for them to kind of like gate this system. We're also seeing Alan, which is another capital raising project that I was involved in, create like token, like NFT gated deals. And so again, like there's a whole bunch of things that we can do, but the key thing at the moment, I think, is for everyone, if you're still in this room, to go back and look at like what's happened over the last 6 to 12 months, look at there's been a whole bunch of good stuff alongside some of the crazy stuff, and start to think about how can we combine these things together? How can we look at novel mechanisms that have been built, and how can we basically turn them into something that leverages NFTs? So we're good for time? Yeah, cool. So I think the main lesson that I'll leave you with from building in a bear market, because synthetics was built in a bear market, is that the obvious stuff, the really dumb stuff that happens in a bull market, is probably the stuff that gets the most attention because it's very simple. Right? So the simpler it is, the more obvious the narrative is, the easier it is to get people's attention. In a bear market, you really need to flip that around, and you need to start thinking about what are some complex things that you can do that you can actually take the time to kind of build awareness around. And so synthetics, I mean, I think Andre Cronje tweeted about this a little while ago, joking that people still don't understand synthetics, and we're 4 years in, right? There are a lot of things that are just more complex than you can kind of, explain in a single tweet. But there's now time, if you're doing something that's very innovative, for you to actually slowly build up awareness, and it takes time. It's not something that happens immediately. You don't get the immediate attention and hype that you get in a bull market, but it's kind of this slow burn, right? And that's what we saw with DeFi summer, right? We had this slow burn for about 12 months where no one was really paying attention, then all of a sudden people were like, bang, it's here. So I think when it comes to NFT innovation, we're going to have something similar to that, where we probably spend the next 6 to 12 months slowly chipping away, looking at what's been built, kind of creating some new innovative products, and then all of a sudden the attention is going to come back. And until we can kind of go through that process, we're just not going to be ready to kind of accommodate. And so, this idea of a super cycle is basically that we've got the technology now that can kind of scale out, and we didn't quite get there this time, but I'm still pretty hopeful that in the next cycle, or in the next 3 to 5 years, we actually get to a point where the technology is ready to scale out, all the way to the entire world, as opposed to a few kind of early innovators. So yeah, that's me. I think if we've got time, if there's any questions. Yeah, one question? No? Okay. All right, easy, cool.
All right, thank you, Kain.
Thank you.